Welcome to the show, Matty Marshall, and we have the biggest event of the year just 2 weekends away. It's the World Cup, Major League Paintball, going down in Orlando, Florida. I got one of the best in the business here to talk shop here this evening, Todd Martinez. He's a Hall of Famer, coach of Chicago Aftershock, a good friend of mine, and one of my frequent co-hosts. Why? Because Todd knows what he's talking about, and he's been around forever. Can't wait to pick his brain on these brackets. So we're going to be focusing on the brackets here in the Pro Division. But the cool thing about the World Cup is so much encompasses that monster of an event. WNXL going to be going down, see who's going to win that pro spot in semi-pro. And then there's probably going to be close to 6,000 paintball players there. 10-man, 5-man, 3-man. We're going to be watching the battle go down, see who's going to win the battle of the armed forces. So, yeah, lots going down at World Cup. It's going down November 8th through the 10th, and it's my favorite event by far. Can't overstate how amazing it is. So without any further ado, let's bring in Todd Martinez and start jumping into these brackets. Lots of compelling stories here, Todd, as we head into this last event, 5th event of the season. And you guys are one of the most compelling stories. I think it's kind of fitting we're starting out with bracket A, and you guys are the top seed in bracket A. It's Chicago Aftershock, the Hurricanes, Brooklyn Bears, AC Diesel, and Ron Holt Dynamite in bracket A. So before we kind of jump in, and talk and kind of, chop up what you think these teams need to do to prevail, what are your thoughts on Shock's performance at the last event? It was another good one, a 5th place. You guys weren't able to get into the finals again like you did at that 3rd event, as hopefully everyone watched on ESPN, but 3-1 in the prelims, and then you lost to X Factor in the quarters. That was disappointing. But your thoughts on the team's performance at the last event in Chicago?
Matty, thanks for having me on once again. I appreciate it. Shout out to Go Sports, everybody, the whole crew, everybody that makes it happen. The Iceman, the Big Dog, everybody. It was very disappointing for, our performance in Chicago. I feel like we've gotten better all year, as a group, as a team, as an organization. And, to go to Chicago and, basically just not win, really was, pretty disappointing. We're to that level now where we feel like we should be winning events. We know what kind of mistakes that we made. And, I felt like we, had a good practice, but not a great practice. We were still learning stuff throughout the event, which obviously you need to do if you're going to be a good team, from match to match. I felt like we learned some stuff and, we didn't necessarily apply it where we could have or should have. And, we just needed to play together more, right? Plays, all the stuff that we do, the X's and O's, that's all on me. But, I need to make sure that everybody is playing together. And, I think that was ultimately what hurt us at the event was, just our unified focus, on what we needed to do together on the field. So I'm going to be better for World Cup. I know all the guys are going to be better. Chicago is huge for us because that's our hometown. We had a ton of fans there, a ton of old, like OG Chicago guys, old Aftershock alumni there. But like Billy Saransky always says, right, it's World Cup. Everybody forgets about everything else, right? People show up to watch Aftershock pound people. And that's the plan going into Orlando in a couple weeks here.
Yeah, that definitely used to be the case if you look historically at Chicago Aftershock's performance. And that's kind of the cool thing now with Todd Adamson, former Aftershock star. He's a Hall of Famer, brings the name back. And heading into the season, we all thought you guys would do pretty decent. But, here you are sitting in 4th overall out of 20 pro teams. The parity's never been this good. I was on the Spick and Span show yesterday, and I'd like to get your thoughts on this. But, we were just at the WCPPL. And I feel that the team that won that event, I think it was Spica Squad, Dark Horse, the team that won the championship, that D4 team, I think I'd put at least $1,000 on it that they would just stomp out the lowest ranked pro division team from, the early 2000s. Like the level of play is just so cool to see, and it's, so it's just such an amazing story with Shock coming back in. And yeah, obviously it's going to be frustrating, but let me ask you this question. I've been coaching some local teams, but getting execution out of your guys, the talent that they have, that's part of coaching, right? And so when you look at Shock, Hosky's in the running for Rookie of the Year. So cool to see, A-Rod come back and he, obviously, he still got it. He's still elite. Thomas Kim, elite, and then you just have that starting five is absolutely nasty. But you could set the best game plan you possibly could, but everyone has to go out there and execute. How because there's a lot of people out there, whether you're a player or coach, how do you get that? How do you get that execution, in your opinion?
Well, we have a good culture, right? We have a good, Todd Adamson, like I said the last time I was here, Todd and Tammy Adamson, they really encourage everybody to be who they are, So Todd, first and foremost, is all about winning. Aftershock is a winning organization. We're here to put the team first and, make all the players who came before us proud. Todd and Tammy allow us to be ourselves, guys, set a high standard for, what we're here to do, how we're going to act, the things that we're responsible for, we're accountable to each other and to ourselves, and it's always about, doing the things that we know we're supposed to do and not doing the things that we know we shouldn't do. Everybody trusts, loves, believes in each other. We pick each other up. We have each other's backs, and we all play for each other. So, I mean, the things that you can't coach are your effort and your attitude, right? And so, we got a good group of guys that show up with a good attitude and, play with maximum effort, every time we get together. So, the guys, really, it's on them. Like, they do a really good job of showing up to play and, doing it not only for the organization, for me, for their teammates, but also for themselves. But real quick, shout out to Rainey Stanzak. Rainey Stanzak is the one that coached that Sicario's D4 team. So Rainey won the NXL and then turned around and won the WCPPL. Dark Horse was Corey's team. They took second, but Rainey Stanzak, I think he won 2 events this year, coaching his D4 Sicario's team.
Well, yeah, no, shout out to definitely Rainey. I was in the pits when they won that, but didn't Spica's team win some? I don't know. I was just with them yesterday or 2 days ago. I think they might have won a series or something. I don't know.
Shout out to the Lords. Yeah, D4 or sorry, D5. Right, Spica
D5,
coaches.
That was it. D5.
The Lords,
yeah,
the Lords up. Shout out to AJ White. Part of the Let It Fly coalition. You know what I'm saying? Those are the boys. One of those paintball patrons that you always talk about, Matty. One of those guys that the sport just needs.
Well, it's such a cool thing. As we're talking about the best teams in the world here in the Pro Division, but it is awesome to see the health of the regional series, because paintball really truly is a special thing. I'm not going to get all sage smoke and all wildflower on you here as far as like how I look at this game, but to me it is kind of almost a spiritual thing, because like the world wants to round your edges off, and your house is always at 70 degrees. You got air conditioning in your car and you want to keep your kids safe, and rightfully so. But when you consciously decide to go and engage in a big ass paintball battle that is a tournament, and it's just cool that we're about to see World Cup, because we talk about how different World Cup is. Well, why is it different? It's different because you're facing the best of the best at the end of the year when they're supposed to be at their best. And there's just added pressure because it's the biggest event of the year, the last event of the year, the last time to make a statement. But that's what's so special about this game, is that, when I coach teams, I tell them like, hey, man, I look at them in the eyes and I'm like, hey, you ready for this test? You don't get a lot of these in life, but we're about to go through one of these big tests here. So let's focus and get dialed in for this awesome moment, live in this moment right now. So let's talk about some of these teams that you're about to play here in Bracket A, starting off with the Hurricanes, Mike Bianca's boys. Love Mike Bianca. He's a scholar and a gentleman. But they've had a bit of a rough go of it since that second place finish. Again, looking at their left-hand side of your screen, Group A, Hurricanes, Bears, Diesel, and Dynamite. We'll get to the top 4 at the end of the show. The bulk of the battles, though, going to be going down here in the prelims. Those top 4 already getting a bye into the top 8. They'll be playing for seed. But the Hurricanes here, Todd, are such a compelling story. Blue-collar ballers coming out of New Orleans, and they've been highly impressive. A couple of years they've been in the big show. And that second-place finish in Vegas when they had a 3-point lead on Dynasty. Dynasty came back to steal it. But since then, it's been a kind of steady dose of a little bit of frustration for them with the 13th, the 12th, and a 13th, right on the precipice of making Sunday, just not able to do it. But they've been beat up by injuries, though. Seawright wasn't at that last one, and just kind of a tough go. I've been hearing from Mike Bianchi. He texted me actually right before we started the show. And I think he was saying, as I was reading before we went live, that he hopes everyone's going to be healthy. They'll be short Mike Brown. He can't get out of some obligations he has to get, but he feels that the team, they're going to have their, the bulk of their best line there. What are your thoughts on the Hurricanes? I mean, I know you love some Mike Bianca just like we all do.
Yeah, Mike Bianca's great. As you and I both are longtime San Diego Charger fans, injuries can kill your team, your hopes and dreams, on a yearly basis, right? If you don't have all your guys, it's hard, right? But it's also hard in this league to be consistent, right? That's why we give such respect to the teams that are consistently at the top, the teams that consistently win tournaments, because as you say, the parity in the league with all these teams being good, it's hard to perform. And you show up and you could have one bad day and it could cost you an event. You could have one bad event and you start questioning your entire life. But when you have injuries, it's hard to get consistency. If you're missing some of your best players, guys that really make an impact, that definitely hurts. But they're a well-coached team. The way that their group plays together, the type of group that they have, they still manage to find a way to make it work, right? So they're always a dangerous team. They prepare very well. So you definitely have to be ready to play those guys, because they have a deep bag.
Yeah, so even with the loss of Brown, still looks like they're bringing, I believe, 8 bodies. Let's count them up real quick. Yeah, they'll have 8 there. So pretty deep, and deep with some talent in different positions. I like Nick Ripple and the Snake. We don't know what the layout's going to look like. Jason Trozen's been doing an excellent job with the layouts. Probably going to be a mixed bag of aggression and, some spots that you got to make. But, until we actually see what the Snake and the D side looks like, how playable is the middle, kind of tough to have a full-on conversation about chances as far as personnel is concerned. But the first big standout that I saw on the Hurricanes when they came into the Pro Division was Stu Ridgel. He was just an absolute beast up the middle of the field. And then we started learning some of these other names. They got some good 2s, some good 3s, some great first attackers. Seawright was a big star for him at that second place finish till he kind of had that cramp there in the finals. Britt stepped up for him at the last event. And then Camp is a beast. Bell, Bailey, it's they got a pretty good roster. I'm looking forward to seeing, because they're at that stage in their career here, Todd. And I know we only got you for about an hour here, and we got a lot to cover. But the Hurricanes are at a really big point in their professional paintball careers. They've proved that they're good enough to make it into the finals. They've been struggling to make it back to Sunday, the biggest event of the year. Big opportunity for them here, and they kind of need a big showing. It's tough to keep that mental momentum throughout the year and throughout your career. And I love this moment for them. They got a bunch of mentally tough dudes on that squad. So what are your last thought on that mental challenge that the Hurricanes have to go through right now?
Yeah, you got to stay hungry no matter what, right? No matter if it's you don't have certain players or guys are hurt. You still have to stay hungry with the guys that are there. It's always got to be next man up, and believe that we can get the job done. You have to play with confidence every time you go out there. People can tell, by your body language, by the way that you play, by the way that you call plays, how the team feels. So, I think they just need to continue to believe in themselves, play with confidence, and go out there and act like they can win the tournament.
Yeah, last message from Mike Bianca. He said it. He truly believes that champions aren't made anywhere other than deep inside yourself. And then he said, God willing, my boys are going to step up and show everyone at World Cup. And that makes me want to watch the Hurricanes. They've been a very, very fun team to watch. So let's move on. Let's talk about the Bears. So Bears here, again, we're still in bracket A with Aftershock. Bears have had an interesting ride as well here, Todd. No hype. Mike Hinman is, it seemed to be just a one event. Things didn't work out with them. They got a lot of offense, and they just start to make mistakes when they seem to be up bodies, pressing in, in to try to finish off points. But my God, they, when we talk about a full court press, Bears another fun team to watch because they just like to flood bodies everywhere. What are your thoughts on the Bears?
Yeah, I feel like the Bears, they beat us a couple times this year. I feel like they got weapons. They can play at multiple speeds. they're really good at heavy shooting and playing slow, but we've also seen them, they'll send their fast guys, whenever they need to. For them, I feel like it's really about having everybody play big, right? They can't have one guy play well and then a couple other guys not play well, right? I feel like when they're at their best, their core group of guys are all really playing well together, playing really good team ball. And I mean, that's true of everybody, right? When you're playing as a team, you're obviously going to play better, but that's so important for them, right? To have multiple guys playing well, and the coaches calling plays with confidence. And I feel like they're going to need Robbie. I feel like to be to play big for them to have success at World Cup. But I think Nick, when Nick plays well, or like when Nick's playing well, like he's a pretty good gauge of how the team's doing, right? I feel like GJ's pretty solid. Always having that combo
Manners
of
has been good.
Robbie. Yeah, Manners needs to play well. Him and he and Nick sometimes play the same spots, right? But Manners can definitely shoot on the break. He's good at attacking the middle when the wide guys are playing well. But that combo of Joey and Robbie, definitely needs to be firing if they're going to do well.
Well, we always talk about the one setting the tempo. Hey, how you doing? The one set the tempo and the pace for everything. If with how goes your ones, probably goes your tournament. And it has been incredibly impressive to see their ones play so well. Barolo's had a couple good looks. I mean, Manners has been Johnny on the spot. Nick too. Yeah, I mean, the thing is they got, and Jude, love GJ. GJ plays incredibly impressive as that, kind of a two that can take over that first attack and likes to crack things open. They're another fun team to watch. You never really know what's going to happen other than you're going to have guys getting into good spots and pushing the issue when you play the Bears. And other than that last event where they took dead last, it was a pretty good season for them. They made Sunday twice, right on the precipice. Right before that, with that 11th place, it was 10th, 11th, 9th, 20th. But they did lose every game and went -14 at the last one. Yeah, it's tough to diagnose. Bringing Mike in, maybe they were playing extra hard to try to impress him. Vibe wasn't working, whatever. But it was, a little bit of an uncharacteristic performance for him. But the future is bright for the Bears. Love what Magic Mike's done with the squad. They have Julian on the squad. My shout out to Mortal Enemy. They actually knocked us out of the D4 on Sunday, and he was coaching against me. Smart guy, man. So that team is stacked. A lot of opportunities there. They need to whittle it down though pretty quick. Probably, they're not going to run two lines to make it to Sunday, so they got to figure it out. Who are they going to ride on that hot hand? They just have a ton of options for that squad. Let's move on to Diesel. So talk about compelling stories here, Todd. AC Diesels has had a real rough go of it since they've been together. Just with that high-powered roster, not really able to execute, and gone through a bunch of coaches. Not going to have Ryan Gray for this one. He's actually going to be coaching Scalp. And they lost every game at the last event with a -8. Lost Impact by 1, lost X Factor by 1, couple battles there, lost to Notorious by 1. And it's just so tough. I mean, Todd, what do you do when you're losing these 1-point games to try to keep these guys focused? And then obviously they got blown out against Aftermath, but ship had sailed at that point with 3 losses. They knew they weren't going to make Sunday, and, again, ended up with that -8. But, again, a 20th, a 9th, a 13th, and a 19th. So a dead last, a second to last, a Sunday, and a 13th here for Diesel. They got to figure something out here, or Mark's got to blow up that roster, start over. I don't know. I mean, it's talk about chapters yet to be written. No one really knows, including probably Diesel, how things are going to go down in the future. What are your thoughts?
Well,
yeah, big exhale.
yeah, it's never a good look. Yeah. It's never a good look when you fire your coach right before World Cup, right? Yeah. I mean, you watch those games, was it all his fault? Like the rumblings were that,
no.
Everybody was not happy with, the way that, he was coaching. However, we saw him do, we saw Ryan Gray have success with Notorious, right? With a team that had, no disrespect, less talent, right? And we watched that team, grow consistently. So we've seen Diesel be bad without Ryan Gray there, so I don't necessarily know if it's the coaching, right, or the play calling, who knows, not being inside that camp. But we've watched AC Diesel for a couple years now, just not be able to get it together, but it seems like they make hasty changes. They took a big shot, and it seems that they make hasty changes when you're bringing in these guys who are supposed to be superstars, who are superstars, like clearly are superstars, right? That who are gone now, and having success, in other places. But it's like that team was a tough team to play, before they brought all those guys in, right? So, is it a matter of the coaching, like, is there, and Cody's gone now too, right? Cody left.
Yeah, he went
so
to
Cody's
Revo.
on Revo.
Went to Revo.
Yeah, so they lose a player and a coach. Do they need to? I don't know, man. I don't know, dude.
I don't know either. I don't know. I mean,
everything's been bad.
We could spend the whole.
Everything's bad. Yeah,
everything's bad. Todd, I mean, you and I have had this conversation on camera, off camera. I've had this conversation on and off camera for 2 years running now. I can't figure it out. I can't figure it out. I mean, we had said that, so it was kind of after the last one, because when we could do a whole hour-long show just talking about Diesel. Maybe we'll do one in the off season. We got a little bit more time. We'll bring all the Diesel guys on. I don't know. Maybe they won't want to talk about it. I'm not sure. But it's been such a cool story. It was such an awesome when Mark put that team together. And I was like, wow, we got another powerhouse. We got another paintball patron that cares, that loves this game. I just hope Mark doesn't give up, because I really like Mark Johnson, and I think Diesel's a cool ass paintball name. And I really like the guys that he has on that team. He's got scrappy guys. They just haven't. This is how hard it is. This is just how difficult it is at this level. And they haven't been able to get it together. But, I don't know. I think that how the offseason will go for them depends on how well. Because if they show up and somehow win World Cup, which, again, looking at that roster, and if you just randomly stumbled across this video and you don't know pro paintball, the guys on the roster for Diesel are absolutely nasty. If we start with the future Hall of Famers, I mean, Alex Mouse Goldman will, the second he stops playing and I get that ballot, like I'm voting for Mouse. I mean, Kyle Spica has helped Dynasty win World Cups. He's played on top teams. Jesse Stevens has been, a solid go-to attacker for different squads, most notably San Antonio X Factor. Clint Johnson is an offensive, insane machine weapon. Dude just pulls out crazy stuff. He's won performance bonuses before. Mark still got it. Rene Rodriguez is a talent. BJ Henningberg is a missile. Silos Cortez, you've worked with Silos. He's an offensive, when he's on, he's incredibly hard to shoot and he's helped a lot of top teams over the years. And then Mark Baginski, the Iceman, I mean, that's a badass roster. There's no reason that roster shouldn't be making every single Sunday and be threatening for wins. So I don't know. We've been having a hard time. Again, we could do an hour-long show about it, but they're going to have to, fight through another one here, and then we'll see what happens in the offseason. I just hope that Mark doesn't give up. I really hope that Mark doesn't give up, because they are, when we get to New York Extreme and we start having the relegation conversation, Diesel's sitting at 18th. Now, New York Extreme would have to take, I think, better than top 8, and Diesel with double points would have to take dead last for them to get relegated. So that's a tall order for New York Extreme, sitting with 119 overall points and then 206 for Diesel. Notorious is between them, sitting in 19th place. But yeah, man, I don't know. This is this will go down as one of the craziest paintball mysteries of all time. Like how did Diesel with this roster? I still don't know. It's crazy. I just hope Mark doesn't give up, because he's a paintball patron and I really like him.
Well, I will say one thing. Watch it, like thinking back now, like we were in the pit next to them at the last event, and it really seemed like there wasn't a lot of communication going, right? And I always preach communication, right, on the field, right? Because you have to know what's going on so that you can make good decisions. And I definitely remember noticing that they weren't talking very well out on the field. And sometimes that can happen because, guys aren't talking off the field, right? That relationship that I'm going to go out of my way to help the guy next to me be good, maybe wasn't there because they were, clearly everybody had a problem with the coach, right? People had problems, maybe people still have issues with each other, right? Like we can say that, this guy's out of position or that guy's not playing well, right? But at the end of the day, right, it's hard to win paintball because everybody's got the ball. It can go down anywhere at any time. One guy can break through and shoot 3, 4, 5 people, if somebody looks the wrong way. But, I remember their communication definitely being an issue at the last event. And, when guys are, in their own head or, not talking to each other, not talking to the coach, then, I think that can be an issue. Right. So I feel like we've had that conversation last year, right? When, all the guys that had already been on the team, maybe weren't so jazzed about Mark going and picking up 4 new guys, right? When the team had actually been doing decent with just the group that they had, right? So, maybe that's still going on, between the guys that have been there before and the new guys and then the new coach. And I don't know, but communication is very important.
The big XL, I don't know. Cause again, and then I agree with you. My last thought on them is that, at the last event, we're talking about how they seem to not like when the moment hits, they sometimes won't shoot the body they need to shoot and lose the body. They get too many penalties and pressure situations occasionally. And then in paintball, because like you said, everyone has the ball, or everyone's offense and defense at the same time. It's a captivating chess match with guns, but there seems there's when the move needs to be being made and when it's actually made, and then once a move is made, who plays off of that. And the teams that have more time in the combat headspace and time behind the guns with their brothers, with their teammates, are a little bit quick to being right at that exact moment where that move needs to happen. And they seem to be slightly off that beat sometimes and trying to do it too individually. So, workable things. It's just difficult. And, hey man, every event you get a new chance. It all resets and you go back into there. It just, but they get, it's gonna be a tall order. Let's move on and talk about Dynamite. You got any insight on Dynamite? So, Dynamite coming in here, one of these, it's World Cup. So, it's cool to see the international teams get in there, scout, because they did so well in the European Championships and able to get that top seed. So they're going to get top 8 no matter what, stacked up with a team used to coach, a couple bodies from Breakout Spa. We'll get to scout when we talk about those top 4. But I'm looking at these names for Dynamite and not a ton of familiar names for me, but these are the fun teams to watch. They took 3rd at the event at the NXL European Championships, 9th at the British Invitational, and then 4th in Portugal. So heading into the Lion's Den that is pro paintball over here in the States, based on the 3rd, the 9th, and the 4th, not able to win any events. Now, if we go back to how they perform at some other events, I mean, they have put some wins on the board, but they haven't been able, at least, let's go back a little bit. I don't think they have any wins in NXL performances. Formed in 2018, started in D2, bumped up into pro, semi-pro, took a 2nd in 2022. Yeah, it's going to be, we'll see, but tall order for them here, Todd, as they head into Survivor Island, which is the NXL Pro Division over here in the States. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I actually did get to watch them play in Portugal. We practiced them with the Shock team beforehand. They do have some good players. I feel like they are, even though they haven't had like that winning success, I feel like that they're still a pretty good, solid team. Definitely not going to underestimate those guys. I think they ended up in our bracket one time, and it was definitely a tough match. So I think those guys will be fun to watch. They got a lot of young guys on that team, I think. They definitely attack. Like I said, I watched them play a few times, and I think they're a pretty decent team. So they're definitely going to make this bracket interesting. They're definitely no pushovers by any means.
They definitely have a lot of younger guys on the squad. Just looking at their roster, a lot of dudes in their early 20s, prime of their lives. Yeah, a lot of dudes that are 23. Yeah, it looks like early to most dudes in their 20s. And the Norwegians always play aggressive. So the one thing that it seems to be a pattern over time from particularly the Scandinavian teams. I mean, I played with Joy Division back in the day. They like to play aggressive. They're modern incarnations of the squad, aggressive. The Norwegian teams always like to push the issue. So could be very fun to watch them play. But yeah, hey man, maybe they step up when, who knows, make it to Sunday, become some paintball heroes. It's possible. Let's move on to Group B. Damage, Fit, Aftermath, Notorious, and Fusion. Spider Fusion coming out of South America, Brazilian squad. We'll start with Damage here, Todd. Damage undefeated at the last event. No surprise them winning another tournament. They've won a decent amount of tournaments over their careers and definitely been railing off some wins, 2 in a row last year. Started off the season not like they wanted to in event number 1 for Tampa Bay Damage with that 13th, which is why even with the consistency, the 6th, the 7th, and the 1st, that 13th not making Sunday, that's why they're not in that top 4 or really top 3 with because he doesn't win a tournament this year and Damage has, but Damage has to scrap through and fight in this prelim battle here. I had a big long talk with Joey Blute. Says everyone's healthy and they're coming for it, man. He said they've been training. Everyone survived the hurricane. Everyone's been chainsawing, trees in their backyard and putting fences back up. But other than that, everyone's good to go. Everyone's whole and they're ready to get after it. What are your thoughts on Damage?
Well, I feel like Damage is as healthy and as together as any of the top teams, right? They have weapons all around. Jacob Edwards is just insane. Chad Bougere is out there. He's motivated. He's in great shape. Jason Edwards was hurt last event and he didn't play, but they got big performances out of Keith Brown. And you can't tell me that Rainey Stanzak doesn't impact winning more than any player over the last decade, right? He's on Impact. They win. He goes to X Factor. They win. He leaves. They haven't won. Goes to Damage. And now all of a sudden Damage is making a resurgence. So, over the last couple of years, just the impact that Rainey has had on winning, for the teams that he played on, and especially Damage here the last couple of years, like you can see that all those guys are excited about playing. Keith Brown is probably the fastest dude in the league. He's just a machine. He's an aggressive snake machine that is very hard to stop. He creates opportunities for guys like Rainey and Chad and Jacob to play in their groove, and they're a really hard team to beat. Like we beat them a couple times this year, but we had lost to them, or I had lost to them, for probably like the 3 or 4 times before that, so they're always a tough team to beat. I mean, Damage, like you got to hope that they show up and play like they did in Vegas.
Yeah, they've been playing every weekend. These dudes have been playing every weekend, even with the hurricane set them back a little bit. Hurricanes, plural, set them back a little bit. But since then, they realized, hey, man, we have to get back after it. And even though Keith Brown just won the MVP award, he's been out there, grinding, shooting apparently 1,000 snapshots a day. So hope everyone out, if you are on this, guys, if you play in this division or just in general here at World Cup in the Pro Division, I hope you've been training, because the guys that won the last event have not really let up, other than literally a giant ass hurricane coming through and almost blowing their houses down. Yeah, it's a tough roster. I mean, they've won events running 2 lines. They've won events cutting down to that, starting 6 or 7. Rainey was a beast out there. He stepped in perfect for Jason, and that worked out great for him. It's been really cool to coaching some of these divisional teams out here to see Rainey work. He's just fun. We talk about baseball and paintball, and it's just he's got a mind perfect for it, and he's a competitor. He hates losing. He's been here forever, and he knows what he needs to do. even if he's not the guy that's actually getting all the spins. If he's getting all the spins, yeah, you got to worry about him as a player. If you're not getting spins, you got to worry about his brain in there, helping his boys out and figuring your tendencies out. Let's move on to fit. So
and
again, damage,
also,
one of the big favorites. Yeah.
They're also like every player on their roster is really good though too, right? They're super deep. You go down the line and every player on that team is still really good. So like even if those top guys aren't playing good, they got dudes that can come in and make a difference, right? Dan Holiday, Chris Horn, nobody really talks about how good Chris Horn really is. Like Marky Ireland can play, everybody on that roster, Lackey, Lackey's a weapon. So, everybody on that roster from top to bottom can play paintball at a high level. But
yeah, absolutely. Again, and then who's going to be that hot hand, who's going to be it? And it's just tough with them because they've won a bunch of tournaments here in just the past couple of years. Let's move on to Fit. Fit has had an interesting run. They finally made it to a Sunday at the last event and took a 7th place. They beat Infamous in a 2-1 game. They have an interesting mix of threats and control. They shoot a lot of bodies on the break. They filter bodies up really well. I like their game planning. Chavez is an absolute elite beast on that D side. And then with Mason and Stewart in the Snake, Colt shoots lots of bodies. Cyrus was a huge standout for them in some clutch situations. They're getting a little bit deeper and they're getting a little bit more scary. A 12th, a 12th, an 11th, and a 7th. They're also a team that's, has no problem playing on Sunday. I talked to them Sunday morning and I was like, how you guys feeling? And they were just locked in, dagger eyes, totally stoked for the moment because they're super used to playing on Sunday. I mean, they won every single semi-pro event last year. They expect to be there. What are your thoughts on Fit?
Fit gave us a heck of a game. They went up on us early. I felt like they kind of went away from what was working for them. I thought that they actually could have done. I can't remember who they lost to on Sunday, but
Legion.
I thought that Legion. Yeah, I mean Legion's a tough team, but I thought that what they did to us in our game was the way to play the field. I think that they're great at shooting, great at communicating. They play together. They're really good at staying alive. I know that's kind of foreign to some people, sometimes, but just like the ability to just stay alive and not die sometimes, like they're really good at that. And, like you see Colt back there sometimes just hugging a bunker, screaming for help, but just, sometimes people freak out and, they want to just over battle. Like, I feel like those guys don't really over battle that much. I thought that their play calling was really good. And I think that, when you get back into the pro division, I feel like they've gotten better throughout the year, but they don't lack any confidence. They probably play more together than any team in the league. And, when you play that much paintball, it's like you're bound to get better. Right. I feel like they do things the right way. They have an amazing support system and, those guys love paintball, right? You got to love the game. You got to love what you do, love being out there. And, I don't think there's anybody that puts more time in than those guys. So it's not really surprising that they've gotten better, right, throughout the year. So I think that they very well will be one of the teams that comes out of this division.
I want to get your picks before we sign off in a bit. Yeah, it's also interesting here that we're in tier 2 in Group B, and we're going to start getting into the rest of these teams. And the fact that they only made one Sunday, but they were again 12th, 12th, 11th, 7th, so consistent. So we're going to see a little bit, more inconsistency as we go down these with some of these other names. But this is just how hard it is out here in pro paintball. What are your thoughts on Aftermath?
So I feel like Aftermath's got really good young talent. I think that they played well together. I think they communicate well. They showed us last year that, they're capable of showing up and having a big performance. I believe they went 4-0 in the prelims. And I think they might have won their first game on Sunday before losing. But, they did that by playing one style really well, and it was like watching them throughout this year. It's like, is that going to be the way that they feel like they can win, you know, because you have to be versatile, right? You have to be able to play different styles of paintball. You have to be able to adjust. You have to be able to pivot. But I mean, those guys play a lot of paintball together too. I think that uh, depending on this field layout, you know, partly is going to determine, you know, how successful they are. They haven't had a lot of like big game experience, right? Not a lot of, you know, deep Sunday games. So, you know, this is World Cup and everybody's coming to play and everybody's putting their best line, their best everything out there. So, you know, if Aftermath's going to have success, then, you know, they're going to have to really have a big showing here, you know, at this event. A lot of guys are going to have to step up. They're going to have good practices, good game plans, you know, good meetings, good everything, right? Because, you know, it's going to be hard to get out of this bracket, I feel. And, you know, when you get into Sunday, then, you know, all the big dogs want to win this World Cup more than anything. So it's going to be tough.
Yeah, well, last year, Todd, at World Cup, Aftermath 7th place. They followed that up with the 4th place in Vegas. That was their best performance at the beginning of this year. Since then, they have not made a Sunday. They run 2 lines like a religion, which means both lines need to play really well, or one line needs to play so much better than the other line that they become the obvious go-to option. But last year, they, you know, beat Revo by 1, beat the Extreme by 1, and Extreme was a top 4 team last year, beat up on the Saints, and then they beat the Bears. They went undefeated in the prelims, and then they beat Columbus Level, and then they ran into the Tauntauns and lost by 2. It was a great run, and then starting off the year in 4th place. But ever since then, it's been more grinding their gears. They do play a ton of paintball, and this is a big moment for them. We're going to be saying that for a lot of these different teams, but you know, when you go 7th at Cup, 4th at the first event, everyone's looking at you like, oh, maybe your time is now. Maybe this is going to become a top team. But since then, they just haven't been able to put it together, sitting down at 13th place with a 17th, a 14th, and a 14th. So something needs to happen here for Aftermath. Let's move on to Notorious. What do you think about Austin Notorious? Been a fun team to watch. Didn't have Archie Barnes Jr. at one of the events this year as his family had a baby, but they are going to have him for this one. They still got Bogdan. It's a pretty fun team to watch. They're picking up Mason Hines and Tommy Carroll from the Lucky 15s. They got a lot of offensive threats. Notorious it's going to be probably a crazy team to play because depending on the layout, but they probably might be sending it here. You're going to have to deal with some offense when you play this team. What do you think?
Yeah, Archie Barnes is definitely a problem. You know, to have to deal with a guy like that where you know he's going to the snake, he's fast, he's hard to shoot. You know, once he really figures out how to play it well situationally, you know, that guy's going to be insane. All those other guys, like these dudes are just, I feel like they're just kind of wild cards, right? Like they could be amazing, they could be terrible, right? But they're definitely going to be aggressive. They definitely send it. And, you know, they're not scared to play, you know, up in your face paintball, right? The 2 guys from the Lucky 15s, I think, are huge pickups for them because those guys are coached by Marcelo over there in Europe, and the Lucky 15s are a really good team. The Lucky 15s, I believe, showed up last year and gave some teams fits as, you know, as themselves. But I think that those 2 pickups are big, and we'll see, you know, what they do with it when they get there. But yeah, I never underestimate Notorious. You know, you don't want to let them get into the snake and let Archie go to work on you. But you know, with those guys, you know, you really want to try and, you know, mitigate the snake attack, right? And then try and deal with those other guys. But those guys really care. You know, they're definitely passionate about it. So, you know, we'll see what team shows up when they get to Orlando.
Yeah, and we don't know a lot about Spider Fusion. I've been asking around a little bit, but their highest ranked guy on pbleagues.com is D3. You know, earned the right to be here because of, you know, winning that championship. First out of there's 12 teams, and you know, it was a first out of 12 in the let's looking at it real quick. Yeah, Latin American Championships, 1 of 12. So they won that, and that's how you get into that, in this World Cup competition. But they came here last year in D3 and took 20th place out of 21 in Division 3 at World Cup. So, again, kind of a team that doesn't have as much as Dynamite as far as experience. So probably going to be in even a bigger ask for them in this division. But for the rest of the teams in this division, this is a must-win game, and you probably got to win by a lot. If you're not putting up a big score against Spider Fusion, that could mess up your chances to make it to Sunday if you're Damage Fit, Aftermath, or Notorious.
So what's the over-under on how many points Fusion scores at this event?
I mean, realistically,
we did have the Wild Dogs randomly show up one time and surprise everybody.
I hope that's what I hope that's what happens. Yeah, I mean, again, realistically, they definitely did well enough to win, the Latin American Championships, and who knows how much work they've done in a year. But yeah, this is a tough one for them, because you're going to play Notorious with some of the best players from Lucky 15s, an angry Aftermath, a Fit that just finally took Sunday, and then the team that won the last event. I mean, realistically, if I'm coming in, I'm thinking like, okay, well, they're like, oh, let's go win. But if we're having a serious conversation, if they could put up a couple points against each of these teams, that's a step in the right direction, man. If your highest ranked guy is D3 and you're playing Tampa Bay Damage, who literally did not lose a game at the last event, and Paintball Fit that plays every single weekend, like Monster Gunfire, I don't know. What do you think? In the 4 games they're going to play here, what do you think?
I think they get 6-0 in at least 3 of those games.
Yeah.
Not to be a dick.
It's definitely No. Again, we have to have a serious conversation. That's why people are tuning in. We can't. This is pro paintball, dude. We're not patting you on the back just because you got here. We have to have a real conversation. Yeah. There's probably people putting real money on this too, so they need to get that information. Let's move on to Impact real quick. Give me your thoughts on Impact.
Man, Impact, I feel like, is always solid, right? They've been playing high-level paintball, I feel, all year. They had, I would say, looking at this bracket, I feel like they should win out this bracket. But, I feel like they've even been competitive with, all the top teams throughout the year. And, I feel like they're still a team that can win an event. They showed up to World Cup last year and played really well. Could have gone all the way. They have a lot of guys that are tough players to deal with. And, they have that continuity. They have guys that have played together for a long time. They've had the same coach for a long time. They have high expectations. They're going to get a good practice. They have everything that they need available to them. Bart provides absolutely everything for this team to be successful. So, they have a style. They have history. This team knows how to win, right? From top to bottom, every player on that team's good, or otherwise they wouldn't be there. And, I think that, Impact has a chance to win any event.
I agree. And if you look at the last 2 performances, so coming off the first time that Impact has missed a Sunday in, I think it was 11 years, was in Texas. They took 15th. Since then, they've been dialed. 3rd place in Chicago, Atlantic City, and then 4th in Chicago. But if you look at that 4th place, they beat Diesel by 1. They beat Notorious by 3. They beat Aftermath by 4. They beat X Factor, who made it to the finals in the prelims, and then they beat them by 1. So they're undefeated. Then they play Heat, and they beat Heat by 3. So they're looking outstanding, undefeated through their first 5 games. And then they just ran into the buzzsaw that was Tampa Bay Damage. That was an incredibly close game, and they only lose by 1. They finished with a plus 11. So Impact's going like this. They are definitely looking better and better and better. I think in some universe, Impact wins this tournament. I can't call it because it's so tough with how many different teams have a chance to win this. You guys do, Damage does. All the top teams have a chance to win this. Like your current incarnation, Shock, hasn't won a tournament yet, but they just put that team together, and that team in a previous incarnation did win. And I actually think the roster you have right now in Shock is better than the 2020 Ironman that won Vegas on paper. And then Damage, obviously a favorite. We'll get to Dynasty in a little bit. And then we got Legion, X Factor, and Heat. So, but of those teams, I think that we have to keep Impact in the conversation for a team that could win World Cup. I think they're right on that level. They just got to get some performances on Sunday. But they got threats everywhere. I agree with everything you said. It's a top team, and it's getting better and better. So that could be the team that wins the World Cup here in 2024. What do you think about the Ironman? We're talking about how consistent Impact has looked recently, obviously after that hiccup at the second event, but the Ironman have been it's been different for them. A lot more inconsistency here for the longest running pro team in existence.
Yeah, I couldn't put my finger on exactly why Ironman has been inconsistent this year. I feel like they had a pretty tough bracket last event. Yeah, if I do recall, they were in a pretty grinder bracket and they played some tough teams.
Just real quick, for your argument, Hurricanes, Legion, Extreme, and Revo.
Yeah. So everybody except for Extreme, was playing pretty good out there.
Well, for the Ironman,
right? They're a new team as well.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
yep.
They we practiced them before Vegas, and we saw them struggle a little bit in Vegas. They weren't very dynamic. They're trying to win from the back. And then we saw them go to Dallas, and I think that was their best event. And that's when everybody seemed like they were more aggressive. They were shooting better on the break. And then everything happened with the storm, and then I think they lost their first game of that Dallas event when we went out to Atlantic City, and then I think they got smoked in Atlantic City. So first time with a new team, and then they play well, and then they don't play well, and then I believe they had a pretty tough bracket there the last one, and I think they had some close games even though they were in the tough bracket in Chicago. But again, consistency is rough, right? You got to have good practices. They have brought Shane and Paxton back, to lead the charge. Once again, for the second year. So, those guys, back coaching again, and trying to build a team with the guys that they wanted. I think that they got some good players, right? Between Stephen Henry, Tom Guest. I think Scotty Graham might be back for World Cup. He was injured and missed a few tournaments, but they picked up a young fast kid, right? I can't remember that kid's name, the new guy.
Brody Lewis.
So they have a style that they want to play, right? And I feel like Shane Pestana is going to live and die with that style. He wants to attack, right? And then attack some more. So, they want to play that. And, I think that, that's great, but they just got to get it together. Right? They have good players. Again, communication is always important, but, I feel like it is a new team, and, there are ups and downs when you're trying to figure out, who you are and how you play and how you play together.
Yeah, I agree with that. They beat the Hurricanes by 2 at the last event, lost to Legion by 1, beat up on Extreme by 4, and then lost to Revel by 1, went 2-2, made it. And then Uprising, which we'll get to in a little bit here, bracket D, I think is the bracket of death. And then Uprising played outstanding. They just beat them they were a little bit more disciplined than the Ironmen were, beat them in a low scoring game 3-1. But yeah, again, it's just getting the vibe on field with the team. They definitely seem to like each other, and they're excited to have that core group. At least that's what everyone tells me behind the scenes when the cameras aren't on. So I think they legitimately enjoy playing paintball with that squad. It's just how long can they keep that together and then start showing those, consistent results on the field. Infamous, as we move on to Infamous, is another situation where, that team has a, like the Ironmen, have a lot of offense. Infamous is a lot of dudes that like to push the issue. They lose Nate, because Sam Silberg had just become their go-to guy on the D side. So Nate wasn't getting a ton of play time. That definitely helped out Nate, helped out Uprising, based on what we saw at the last one, which we'll break down when we get to Uprising. But what are your thoughts on Infamous? I think Infamous is again another team has been around forever. Really like the guys on that squad. I like watching them play the game. They've been inconsistent this year though, because they did take that 20th place at the second event. So they went 7th, 20th, 8th, and 10th. So mostly near that top 10, but they had that big anomaly with the 20th place. Went 2-2 at the last event, -1 overall, lost a fit on the wild card round on Sunday. What do you think about Infamous's chances here in this bracket, Group C for Cup?
I definitely think that they have a chance to move on out of this bracket. I think that the Ironman, Infamous, and the ML Kings, right? It's kind of like I feel like I've seen those guys all play really good paintball, like at a certain point this year, right? But it's always that consistency, I know that we played the Kings a couple times, and those guys give us really good games. But it's about being able to get it together from point to point, match to match, and string a bunch of good stuff together. So I feel like Infamous, they're capable of beating any of the good teams at any time. Travis does a good job of coaching, but they also run pretty slim and trim. They didn't have Zach Patient at the last event, and I believe that with Nate being gone, they had 6 guys maybe, right? And that was with bringing Ryan Rodarte back. So and I thought he played well, having him come back. So it's basically Sam, Joe, Rodarte, Jonah, and Dracula. And they got to get the job done. So, but I mean, that's a good group of players, right? And they got a good coach, they're very capable.
A team that's had getting some penalties and a few roster changes here and there, but you got Barrett, Brusselback, Hall, Ryan Hall, Jonah Jamrose. Oh man, love watching Jonah play. Hall's been really good for him. Brusselback, yeah. Tim as go-to attacker. Barrett's a really solid 2-3. Looks like they're gonna have Brett Messer on the roster. Not sure how his back is doing though. And then Patient also. I talked to Zach at Chicago. He seemed to be thinking he might be able to play Cup, but it was a little early, so he's not sure if he's going to push it or how. I'm not exactly sure how his recovery has been going from that back surgery that he had. But Rodarte played really, really well for him. Callie family had a kid, so they get Callie back. So they're going to be deeper at Cup. They're going to have a few more options out there, and some of those. So some of those options are some veterans, but I agree with you. I think this is a team that has a chance to make it out of this bracket. It's just with the ML. So let's move on. ML Kings and New York Extreme, 2 teams that are. Well, Extreme is definitely on the precipice of potentially getting relegated down to the semi-pro division, much more so than the ML Kings are at 17th. They're separated by about 90 points, double points at Cup. So what do you think about the ML Kings and New York Extreme? We could they're obviously 2 different squads, but they're kind of in similar situations, some underperformance this year. No Sunday. ML Kings did make 1 Sunday. They took a 10th at the second event, but it was a 19th, a 10th, a 15th, 16th, and then New York Extreme 18th, 19th, 17th, 17th. So it's been a steady dose of frustration here for both ML Kings and New York Extreme this season.
Yeah, it's rough because you just see the ML Kings be so hot and cold, right? Like I watched them play and play really well. Being like, man, we got to play those dudes in a couple games, and they look good, right? And they probably could have beat us if it weren't for penalties in Dallas. I thought that Atlantic City, I thought that they started off well, but then just petered off. But it's about consistency, communication. I feel like the Kings really just need to, just come together more. Like I feel like there's a lot of arguing sometimes, like when you look at their pits. And maybe I'm wrong, but it's finding whatever it is that those guys got to do to be consistent, right? New York Extreme, just the biggest drop off, right? Like you said, they were a top 4 team last year at World Cup, and then just to be playing the way that they're playing. I know that they didn't have some guys at the beginning of the year as well, but they also lost a bunch of guys, right? Corey Hall, who else? Oh, they lost Harris. Not having Harris, I think, is just hurt more than anything. I think that was the biggest loss of probably the entire season, right? So, when you lose, Big Daddy, it's kind of hard to recover from that. But I don't know. They're not playing well. The facing relegation is definitely not a spot that you want to be in going into World Cup.
Yeah, I mean, they still have Jerry as a beast in the snake. And again, when I go through this roster, I'm like, how are these guys in last place? They got Pat Kraft, McLean can be a beast out there. They got Thomas Taylor and Josh Taylor. The biggest story overall is that they lose Corey, and Corey was a leader off the field as well as on the field. They pick up Thomas. They play separate positions, but then they had a rash of injuries for their starting guys. And that just, again, proves how hard it is in the pro division. And they just had a bunch of bad breaks, some losses. They couldn't stay in matches. And so they couldn't get their best dudes out there. They lost one of their best, definitely core starting 5, who's become a star for you guys. At Corey Hall just keeps getting better and better and better. So that ended up becoming a bigger deal than on paper everyone thought it was going to be. And they just can't keep the guys healthy. That's it. Now they're in last place fighting against relegation. It's just going to be interesting to see if they do get relegated, what happens to that roster, because there's a lot of guys on that team that, might not want to play semi-pro, though I have heard that, Bo Milo will keep it going and try to win the spot back. And he still likes to play paintball. So that could be a cool story to track if that does happen. Or maybe they go top 8 and a miracle goes down and they end up saving the spot. Let's move on to Group D here. Dynasty, Revo, Blast Camp, Uprising, and the Tauntauns. To me, Todd, my first question is, do you think this is the bracket of death? I think it is. What do you think?
So this definitely has the potential to be the bracket of death. It probably is. Depending on how some of those, third and fourth tier teams play. But we say that every time, and then the teams that are in those tiers usually end up playing like teams in those tiers. But I feel like, with Dynasty, that's always going to be a tough one. Revo, I think, has been playing pretty well all season. I just feel like Revo's got a pretty good vibe, right? Like they don't get too up, they don't get too down. Even when they're down points, they keep fighting. I feel like their coach does a good job, Mike, right?
Yeah,
Jeffrey. I feel like he does a good job. And Blast Camp, every time I expect them to come out and play like a slow brand of paintball, they're just all out attack. And I feel like if they come and they do that again at World Cup, I think that, they're going to be a tough team to beat. Really can't wait to see the layout. Uprising is another one of those teams that, they brought in Tyler. They have Nate back now, and, they played better last event, so maybe they're on the upswing as well, right? I feel like, the Uprising of the past, was so hot and cold. They're either 4-0 or 0-4. And, they're always been really good break shooters. I feel like they have a good, good core group of guys that talks really well. So, I feel like they've been trying to figure out, I talked to Tyler Michaud last night for a little bit, and those guys definitely really care. They really care. They do want to be better. They want to, they're asking the questions, on what they need to do and how they need to, focus and prepare so they can beat the top tier teams, right? So, I do think that they have a better mentality now than they used to, where it seemed like they were used to kind of just show up and just, sling it, just let it fly. But then you got the Tauntauns, right? The Tauntauns as the last spot in that bracket. Tauntauns are a good team, and They got some really slippery guys, like Axel over there on the snake side, who's going back from X Factor to play with Tauntauns for World Cup. And, that's every team in here, like you don't want to see Tauntauns down there, as your 5th tier team. And, I feel like any of those guys in the middle, Revo, Blast Camp, and Uprising, can all show up and, be a 3-1 team or a high point 2-2 team. So, field layout is going to be important, but this, probably could be the bracket of death.
The way I look at it is that you have the Tauntauns with the same roster that has proven to be able to win events overseas with just a little bit more seasoning. And then you have Uprising, and one event does not make a season or complete turn 180, but sometimes it's the indication that that's the way it's going. And I really think that that's what's going to happen for Uprising, because so you're talking about the Tauntauns, and anyone that wants to go look, it's like you can go look at that roster and see these are dudes that, the Colombo, between Colombo, William, Axel, Bryce, Thomas, and Hugo, like that roster can win paintball tournaments. And it was pretty much the same roster that went deep last year at Cup, and they're in the 5th tier. And then you have Uprising that played some really smart paintball. They impressed a lot of people. We had Nate Schrader on the show not too long ago. Go check out that episode if you hadn't, and he was kind of breaking it down. But Alec Holland played outstanding for them. Nate played really well, and then Mark was an absolute beast in the snake. They have a pretty deep roster, and I think that they have turned a corner. Like you said, you talked to Tyler Michaud, their coach, and they're training hard. They have good leadership. Their owner's great. Things are trending really, really well for them. And that's tier 4. And then you get Blast Camp, and Blast Camp has some guys that, like you said, layout contingent, right? But you look at that roster, and I've seen pretty much everyone on this roster have a game where I'm like, okay, this dude's pretty damn good. Soap's been impressive. We know what Unger can bring. La Papa, Celios, Zach, Baron, Nathan. They got some dudes that can play, it's just going to be, can they execute in this tough bracket? And then you have Dynasty and Revo both coming off of missing Sunday. Dynasty won the first event, and they've missed 2 Sundays, not in a row, but 2 out of the 4 events. So they're going to be pissed off for greatness. And then you get Revo, they're going to be pissed off for greatness too, because they had the worst showing they've had in the entire year at the last event. And they get Cody Mikowski. And they also didn't have their coach at the last one because he had to go to a wedding and be the officiant. So to me, just this has the makings of the bracket of death. But like you said, you never know, right? Because maybe Revo and Dynasty underperform again. Maybe the Tauntauns have a hiccup. Maybe Uprising, has inflated. Maybe, I don't think it's going to happen, but we don't want to be carrying their goggles around in a semi truck because they got big heads because they had one decent event, and then who knows, we have no idea how it's all going to go down, but it does have all the indications of being the bracket of death. Well, Todd, before I let you go, let's move on and talk about the top 4 teams here. So at Cup, the top 4 teams are going to play their own little kind of mini exhibition tournament for seeding, which it'll be fun to watch them play, but you never know, like what's going to be the best seed to be 1, 3, 2, 3, 4, who knows? Because you don't want to catch that team coming hot off the bracket of death, whichever one it ends up being. And then you guys were just kind of playing for fun and seeding. And then you're catching the dude that just went through the meat grinder, ready to go on Sunday morning. It's Legion, X Factor, Heat, and Scout. Let's start with Scout. Let's start with 4th first. Kind of, murdered their way through the European division over there this year. And they're going to get Ryan Gray, who's going to come over and coach them, which is interesting, so he just spent the season with Diesel, didn't work out, picking up a couple guys from Breakout Spa. They're coming with a very deep roster. They got Sushi, Alexander Pizan, Dylan, and Quentin from Breakout Spa, and then some dudes that, we've seen out there crush it on the European series before. So hopefully no one sleeps on this team, because if you've been watching any European paintball this year, they're pretty good, even without Malloy.
Yeah, so I think that picking up Quentin Duchesne, a.k.a. the Llama, I think that's going to be a good pickup for them, because Malloy was playing the snake for them. So, getting Mac, I think, is huge because, he's a really good snake player. He's fast, he's smart, and he's a great shot. So I think that was very smart of them to pick up, those extra bodies to help out. But both of those guys are excellent players. Obviously they're doing something right? It's not all just Malloy, like they're doing something right out there. Their coaching has to be good. The rest of the team has to be good. If they won, sorry, did you say 2 events or 3 events?
All 3.
They won all 3 of the events. Yeah. So, I mean,
yeah,
they're definitely not going to be a pushover out here for anybody, So, I mean, to be honest, I didn't watch them play a ton of games, maybe, only like 1 or 2. And, they just, they were just smoking people. So, I mean, that's going to be an interesting one. It's always tough to play teams that you haven't watched a lot, that you're not super familiar with. You don't know their tendencies. You don't know like their style, and they could hit you with something that you're not ready for. So, Scalp, they're definitely going to be a dangerous team, showing up here to World Cup.
Yeah, and they won the second event. I mean, they had Arturo, but they didn't have Malloy at the second event. Of course, they had Arturo, and Arturo is absolutely filthy. So Arturo Andrade from Senegal Dynasty. But yeah, they won every single event over in Europe. They got dudes that with a ton of experience. Again, threats and vets. You need threats, people that you're when you play, the teams are they're worried about as your attackers, and then you need vets, guys that aren't going to get rattled when things go south and that thrive in the scramble and can finish points and help be leaders. They have that. So if you're an American, paintball fan and a little unfamiliar with Scalp, it's probably, they're not out of this, man. Like in some universe, they could win this tournament. Let's talk about Houston Heat, team you're very familiar with. So it's been a little, it's for a Houston Heat, a team that's been built to win tournaments. It's won multiple World Cups at 1.2 in a row. They just have not been able to put it together on Sunday. They've made every Sunday incredibly consistent, 3 5th places and a 6th. But it's just been really hard for them to try to win a game on Sunday. They haven't been able to win a game on Sunday so far this year. And up until the last event, they did not lose a game in the prelims. So, but they just haven't been able to put it together on Sunday. They've lost a ton of 1-point matches essentially on Sunday, except the last event, which they lost to Impact by 3. What do you think it's going to take for Houston Heat to win the World Cup here yet again?
Well, like I always say, if you want to win, you got to let Booby spin, right? You got to get Chad Boucher in there, let him ride, let him get funky with it, right? But no, I mean, I feel like with Houston Heat, like you just got to be motivated, right? You gotta be focused and motivated, ready to win. I feel like having that bye the last couple of years hurt, right? Because it's hard. It's like, okay, well, how do we want to handle these seeding games? Sometimes it's like, okay, well, let's try to do some stuff, right? Let's try different things and see how this works, And yeah, you get to figure out, did this work? Did this not work? But then sometimes you end up going, okay, well, was that really realistic on something that I would do when it comes to the actual games that matter? So having the bye the last couple of years, definitely, it's nice because you're guaranteed to play on Sunday, but it's also kind of put you in a tough situation, right? You do get 3 games against really good teams, right? So you're playing high level competition right off the bat. But, it's always that question of, am I playing the same way? Am I approaching it the same way because we know we're already in, right? But at the end of the day, you got to show up ready to win. You got to show up focused, believing in each other, sticking together, and being selfless, for the guy next to you. You got to want to have the guy that you're fighting for, or the guys that you're fighting for know, that you're ready, you're prepared, and you're going to do everything it takes to help them win. So.
Yeah, it's and they've got to be getting frustrated at this point in time because And also for reference, Todd used to coach Houston Heat. So when he's talking about like, hey, it's tough when you're sitting there playing these seeding games, what are you going to do? That was actually you for Houston Heat just last year. So very familiar with the situation that they're now in. Yeah, I think they just need to train as hard as they can, train a little bit more than they have, and remember who they are. They just because they've been so close on Sunday. I mean, they're not getting blown out on Sunday. Like, yeah, the last one was the 3-point spread, but it's been close. So if they just got a little bit more dialed, a little 10% more mentally dialed, train 10% harder, that might be the difference for them. It's just, but that's difficult to achieve sometimes. Let's move on and talk about these last two squads. And so far, they're the number one and number two overall for the year in Legion and X Factor. We'll start with X Factor. 2 finals appearances for them. Legendary squad, been around for a long time, highly successful, but it's been some years since they've been able to put a win on the board. I love this new roster. I've been talking about this all season long. When the season began, I was like, I really think X Factor has a chance to win a paintball tournament in the near future. Maybe it will be 2024. They made it to the finals twice, just haven't been able to close the deal out. What are your thoughts on X Factor?
Well, as always, love Ryan Brand, the most handsome coach in paintball. Great hair, Yes. X Factor is always going to be one of my favorite teams, because Uncle Alex Martinez, like he really cares. He's always going to do, whatever it takes for his team, to be competitive. And, they just have a good group that's really working well together. Getting Fuzzy, I think, was huge for that team because, you have that core that played together for a long time with Fuzzy and TJ and Meter and, you got Billy Bernaccia, who is, just always been one of the best snake players in the league, for the last 10 years. And I think not having Axel is definitely going to hurt. So, we'll see. But, I mean, those guys play with confidence. They do everything at a high level, and having that, familiarity with each other to play off each other. And, I think that, picking up Tim was good. I thought he showed, that he was able to step up last event, which also hurt NYX not having him. Colt is always just, super consistent. And, top to bottom, they got a good roster, right? So, who am I missing? Who am I missing on the – I'm missing somebody. Oh, Cody Bayless. Everybody on that team can play.
Well, the guy that I was really impressed. Well, obviously they're all impressive because 2 finals appearances is very difficult to achieve. But the guy who's basically showed up as a go-to starter for him after working for a couple years, fighting through injuries and real life stuff to have this opportunity present itself, which he grabbed a hold of and ran with it, was Tim Stetzel. Tim Stetzel on that D side snake, he was outstanding. Going back and rewatching a lot of the games and the points, well, all of them essentially, it was really cool to see the high level of performance and just pure killing that he was doing for San Antonio X Factor on that side. And yeah, they have, like, again, we always talk about threats and vets, right? So they got the threats of Billy and the Snake, no Axel, but Billy is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. And then if Tim could play on the D side as well as he did, with how good that, Meter Ninos is getting as a 2, and then the mixture of Colt Roberts and Matt Jackson, they've kind of been trading points a bit. And then with Cody as another attacker on that D side, and then just TJ Danner has been so good. Him and Meter are 2 of the most consistent 2s that I've seen ever. And if they can have all those guys hitting at the same time, they got a chance to win the World Cup. And it's been 5 years since they won an event. We cut to the pits actually in that final battle, and Alex Martinez, such an amazing man and owner, but he said to him, he's like, "Hey boys, it's been 5 years. How bad do you want this?" Because that's how long it's been since they won an event. They've had a decent amount of second places since then, but it's been 5 years since they've been able to put a win on the board. But this is the best roster they've had since that win. So I think they got a big chance. And also, Todd, and before we move on to Legion, only 2 teams have beat Legion all year long, just 2. And it's San Antonio X Factor and Dynasty. That's it. Those are the only 2 teams that have been able to beat Red Legion all season long. So what are your thoughts on Legion? Obviously with that hard fought battle for X Factor, as they were able to put that win up over Legion. But before that, it had been all the way to Vegas before Legion had lost.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, they've just been whipping the shit out of everybody all year long. Like just keeping the brakes off of everybody. They just like bringing in J-Rab. J-Rab's playing free. He's just playing, some of the best paintball. We know that he's, what he's capable of, but, just being out there, being completely calm. The Legion over the last, few years was just incomplete, right? Not having Smotrov, and not having like that final piece by getting J-Rab, was the final Infinity Stone, in the Russian glove for those dudes, because Malloy moves over to the Snake, he's playing the one, J-Rab's playing next to him, and then you have Sergey and Karslev, just missiles over there on that Dorito side, with Kirill basically just going wherever he wants, right? Being the distraction, going up, being the job guy, just getting blown up all over the place, being such a team player to go up and, play that position so that those rest of those guys can, be together, down the sides. But I feel like they just, they're finally complete. They talk really well. They practice with Defy paint, that definitely helps. Right. So, we give them as much paint as they can so they can play all the time. But you see those guys put in the hard work. Those guys practice nonstop. Right. I talked to Kirill today. He's out there at the field. They're doing drills. They're doing running and shooting. They're developing the young guys. It's just nonstop. Like, this is all they do, and you can see, like, when you have talent and, you put in the time and the effort, then, you can be successful. Right. But, the biggest thing for those guys is just the character of players that they are. Right. Second place is a failure for them. If they don't win, then, that's their standard. Then they weren't successful. It's winning or nothing. So, we've seen them rebuild their team a few times now. And, this year's definitely been one of the best years, that we've seen. And getting J-Rab over there and being able to shuffle those pieces around has definitely been a huge part of that. So, they're going to be a tough team to beat. They're pissed off after Chicago. And, but, whoever wants to win, you got to beat the best teams. So you want to be the best, you got to beat the best. And that's why World Cup's, the favorite tournament of the year to win, because everybody's at their best. It's the last tournament of the year. It's a Super Bowl of paintball, and you're going to get every single team out there playing as hard as they possibly can to win this event.
Yeah, Legion, even though they dropped by 4 to X Factor in the semifinals, they still finished the event with a plus 20 on the differential, with 43 points for and 23 against. So even with that 4-point loss, still sitting at a plus 20. And I think that puts them on for the year. I'd have to look at my complete notes real quick, but I think they're sitting at like a plus 70 for the year with 3 losses. It's pretty nasty, but they are beatable. I mean, you saw what happened when X Factor started to get after them, and they just had no answer. They were throwing their other lineup out, which I honestly thought was a mistake. Maybe Malloy was gassed. I'm not sure. But then they did score, a couple points as they were chasing it. But that was a pretty amazing performance from X Factor, because up until then, Legion had started to look invincible. But it's paintball. No one's invincible. So yeah, that's gonna do it here. Again, Todd, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Best of luck with Chicago Aftershock. Anything you want to say, or anyone you want to thank? Obviously, buy weapons, buy Defy. But anything happening you want to let the peoples know about before we sign off?
Well, I definitely want to say thank you to all of our sponsors. If it wasn't for our sponsors, this wouldn't be possible. Die Paintball, GI Sports, shout out to Billy Saransky, OG Aftershock player. Our sponsors have been amazing to us this year. G1, Hormesis, Weapons, SC Village, always got to give a big shout out to SC Village, Geo Bear, for taking care of us, to Rennick, badlandspaintball.com. You can get all the new Aftershock merch on badlandspaintball.com. All of our sponsors, that aren't paintball companies, that have contributed to our success, to my team, Todd and Tammy, my wife for letting me do this, the kids who I can hear rumbling outside just got home. Shout out to Go Sports for bringing us all the coverage, to you, Matty, and Darren, and all the rest of the crew for the hard work that you guys do. It's been another amazing season. Very fortunate to be able to do this still, at the ripe old age of 44 years old. Been doing this for almost 30 years now, and been going to World Cup since 1998. So to all the fans out there, for all the teams, that everybody cheers for and supports the players, we all really appreciate it. For all the podcaster guys like Tyler and Marcelo, shout out Play the Game podcast.
Yeah.
Great American Paintball Magazine, it's trying to spread it through that print media. All the photographers that are out there, that go out of their way and get the shit shot out of them just so that we can have cool pictures. There weren't nearly as many of those when we were younger, but they're all out there now, covering and capturing, especially my guy, Dylan Fout. I love that guy. He's one of the best dudes I know. But just for the entire community, all the support that we get from everybody. And it's a great game. It's a great family, great community. And thank you to everybody that makes this game what it is. And to another World Cup, and let's get out there and bring your best. To all the winners, bring your best. Because you're gonna have to earn it. So thank you, Matty, for having me once again. Weapons.com, defypaintball.com. And if you want to go to Jackson.com, I got one of these new JX1s, courtesy of Bear DeGidio. Got mine early. The newest watch from Jackson. Check it out. This thing is extremely exquisite. All right, man.
Todd, love you, buddy. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Make sure to mark your calendars, November 8th through the 10th, going down in Orlando, Florida. Major League Paintball, biggest event of the year. Can't wait to see it. I'm Matty Marshall. I'll see you guys next time.